My name's Joe, a straight-talking chap from London. Got my own little restaurant in the heart of the city where folks stop by for a quick bite or a relaxed evening meal. I've been serving folks for the better part of 20 years now, having inherited the place from my dad. We've seen generations of families coming in for their comfort food, creating memories. It's a humble place, but it's mine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Now let me take you back 8 years when life was a little less complicated. That's when I met Lisa, my better half. I say better because she really was. Not just pretty, but beautiful in every sense. The kind of beauty that could bring a man to his knees. We were both at a gathering for the broken-hearted. You know, those groups where people talk about their failed relationships, hoping to find solace in shared miseries. Lisa was a stunner, had an allure that drew me in like a moth to a flame. To my surprise, she showed interest in me too, and within 2 days of meeting, we were having dinner together. The evening was filled with talks, laughter, and something I hadn't felt in a while, a sense of connection. Our relationship blossomed and soon we were inseparable. Our intimacy was marked by respect and understanding. But soon it led to her getting pregnant. We were overjoyed. The idea of starting a family at the ages of 30 and 26 respectively was a prospect we eagerly welcomed. The day our first child was born, Lisa's anxiety was palpable. There was a certain unrest in her eyes. Not the typical worries of a new mother, but something deeper, more disturbing. I chalked it up to the trauma of childbirth at first. Yet, the chill in her smile, the shiver in her touch when we held our newborn, it hinted at something concealed. My mind wandered into territories it shouldn't, questioning the abruptness of our family's expansion. But her radiant beauty and our shared love for the little one pushed any brewing suspicion into the darkest corner of my thoughts. The initial 2 weeks post-delivery, Lisa was a whirlwind of emotions. Her brow was perpetually creased, thoughts obviously racing a mile a minute. There was a strange sense of urgency in the way she looked after me, cooking my favorite meals, tending to my needs, almost as if making up for something. Yet her eyes, they were lost, as if stuck in a labyrinth of unsaid words and hidden stories. Every night, I'd find her staring into the void, cradling our child, silent tears streaking her face. It was a paradox. Her affection was heartfelt, but her worries seemed like a haunting melody she couldn't escape. Fast forward to the present. Lisa and I are parents to 3 adorable kids. Our first child, the one we had when we met, is now 7 years old. With the birth of each child, our bond seemed to grow stronger. Life seemed good, almost too good to be true. We live in a comfy little townhouse in East London, my ancestral home where I was born and raised. It's not a mansion, but it has that familiar warmth that embraces you as soon as you step in. Over the years, we've filled it with love, laughter, and a few fights here and there. It has been our nest of happiness, our children's safe haven. It's where we built our family, our life together. Fast forward 8 years from that eventful time in my life. I was a proud father of 3 children with my wife Lisa, my soulmate who never denied me anything and appeared as the epitome of honesty. My existence was filled with joy, or so I believed. I had an old school buddy, Jack, who worked as a doctor, and although we didn't meet often, we kept up through Facebook chats. So one afternoon while chatting with Jack, I decided to share our story, how Lisa and I had conceived our first child within a rather short time frame. Jack, always the medically inclined one, seemed surprised. He gently pointed out the fact that a full-term pregnancy typically lasted around 9 months, and not 7.5 as it had been with our eldest. In my exhilaration of becoming a dad back then, I hadn't considered the discrepancy. Not wanting to believe my friend, I consulted various other doctors. Each time, their responses mirrored Jack's. Their unanimous professional opinion. It's almost impossible for a healthy baby to be born at 7.5 months without any complications. The blow struck hard, the words of professionals confirming my worst fears. My denial was vanishing, replaced by the cold hard truth about Lisa's betrayal. The hurt of deceit by my partner, my life companion, was becoming an unbearable weight on my heart. With Jack's words echoing in my mind, a nagging suspicion took root. In an impulse driven by this newfound doubt, I went ahead and got a DNA test for my eldest. The result threw my world into chaos. The kid I had loved as my own wasn't biologically mine. This information stung like 1,000 bees. My world came crashing down around me. Despite the unfolding reality, my feelings for my firstborn didn't waver. He was mine in every way that mattered, except for biology. His first steps, first words, they were all memories shared with me. His laughter was my world's best melody. His tears, my worst nightmare. A strange mix of love and heartbreak filled me when I looked at him. It was not his fault. He was an innocent caught in this mess. In my heart, he was still my boy, my son, the little human I'd sworn to protect. And no DNA test could ever change that. I confronted Lisa with the DNA results, and she finally broke down, revealing her past. Lisa confessed that she had been part of that heartbreak recovery session because her previous boyfriend had dumped her for cheating on him. She was already pregnant with her ex's child when we met. My mind was in turmoil. The woman I had loved, trusted, and raised a family with had kept such a monumental secret from me. Digging deeper into the past, I started piecing together instances that should have served as red flags. Lisa was always somewhat nervous around our eldest. Her care for the child was more anxious than motherly. The nagging doubts that had crept into my mind during those initial weeks post-delivery surfaced again. All those late-night feeds where Lisa looked lost in thought. Her sleepless nights, her tears. The pieces fit together in a jigsaw of betrayal. The tension was always there in the bedroom as well. Lisa was always adventurous, always the one initiating, and it had excited me. I had considered it a sign of her love and attraction towards me. But now, it seemed more like a ploy to keep my suspicions at bay. The truth was a bitter pill to swallow. But swallow it, I did. In the end, my happy family was shattered, my trust was broken, and my heart was bleeding from a wound that would take a long time to heal. My world was spinning out of control, but I had to steady myself. I had a mission now, one for my son, for the boy I loved as my own. I was burning with questions that needed answers. Cornering Lisa one day, I told her to spill the beans. To say she looked surprised would be an understatement. She was scared, white as a sheet. Yet, I had no mercy. I wanted the truth, needed it for myself and for my son. The question left my mouth before I could rethink it. Who is his father, Lisa? Her silence was louder than any words she could have spoken. The hesitations, the fearful glances, the trembling hands, they said it all. But I needed her to say it, to say the words out loud. Talk, Lisa, I growled, my patience running thin. She flinched, her lips trembling before she finally blurted out, "It's Robert. Robert from the group. Robert, that's who the father of my son was." The name echoed in my head, bringing back a face from the past. Robert from our group. The same man who'd left Lisa heartbroken and cheated on her. The same man who was the root cause of our meeting. The irony was not lost on me. I felt my blood boil with anger, but I held it back. I needed more information. As much as I despised the guy, I had to know more about him for my son's sake. Tell me everything you know about him, Lisa, I demanded. His whereabouts, his family, anything and everything. Our son has the right to know his father. Over the next few hours, Lisa told me everything she knew about Robert. His current location, his job, his family, and his social life. It felt like being in a crime scene investigation, uncovering the grim truth. Yet, the bitter taste of betrayal was slowly being replaced by a sense of purpose. I realized I had a huge task ahead. I had to confront Robert and ensure that my son would not be deprived of the love of his biological father. The path was not going to be easy, but I was willing to walk it. For my son, for the boy who was still mine despite everything. Life had dealt me an unfair hand, but I chose not to fold. I decided to play it for my son's sake. And as I trudged on this twisted journey, I hoped to find some semblance of peace and justice for the innocent soul caught in our adult mess. Next came the task of tracking Robert down. After a few days of searching and making calls, I managed to find him. Looking at him in the flesh, I felt a jumble of emotions, but for my son's sake, I kept them at bay. "Robert," I said, extending my hand to him, "we need to talk." He looked surprised but took my hand and nodded. We sat at a quiet corner of the park, and I told him everything. His face went through a series of expressions, from shock to confusion, then finally recognition. "My boy," he whispered, the weight of reality hitting him. "I have a son." Our conversation was long and difficult. Robert was ready to meet our son and play his part in his life. Yet, his current family situation posed a major hurdle. His wife was adamant about not bringing another child into their lives. Despite this, he vowed to be there for our son whenever possible. After our talk, he met his son. The boy was too young to understand the gravity of the situation, but his eyes shone with curiosity. The moment was bittersweet. It was a meeting of father and son, but the circumstances were far from ideal. Even after all that had transpired, I couldn't bring myself to hate Robert. Yes, he was part of the mess Lisa and I were in. But now, he was stepping up for our son, and for that, I respected him. He wanted to know his son, to be a part of his life even if he couldn't take him in. The circumstances weren't perfect, but I took comfort in the fact that my son would grow up knowing who his biological father was. As much as I despised the situation, I had to admit it was a step in the right direction for our son. My heart was like a drum, pounding in my chest as I took a deep breath. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady despite the rage simmering within me. "We need to talk." She looked up from her phone, surprise flickering across her face. She probably expected me to still be in the dark. My words were sharp as I unveiled the truth, anger and sadness mixing within me. My gaze bore into her, like a hot knife slicing through the lies she had woven around our lives. She cried, begged for forgiveness, but my heart was stone. She had betrayed me, betrayed our family. I was beyond consolation. Now it was time for my revenge. I started by getting in touch with everyone she held dear. Her friends, her family, even her boss. I painted a clear picture of the woman she really was, a cheater, a liar. I watched as they turned against her, the hurt and betrayal mirrored in their eyes. Then I turned my attention to Robert. I approached him in a different way, a father to a father. He was understanding and shocked at the same time. He broke off contact with Lisa, focusing solely on his newfound son. This was not the revenge of the movies, but it felt satisfying nonetheless. As the days turned into weeks, Lisa's world crumbled around her. She had nowhere to turn, no one to confide in. It was a harsh punishment, but she had brought it upon herself. Finally, the divorce papers arrived. Despite my anger, I didn't let it cloud my judgment. I gave her half of everything. It wasn't out of kindness or sympathy. It was my way of cutting off all ties, severing every string that bound us together.